Good evening, listeners. This is Plus Radio. It's Tuesday evening, 6 p.m. UK time. And this is the Spiritual Discussion Program. I'm Saad in Southeast London. And the weather here is overcast, but it's been warm or hot today. And with me, as usual, is Gregory. Gregory, how are you and how is the weather where you are?
Just like you have in London. Very warm. Overcast.
Very warm. Good. So, Gregory, thank you for being on mute there. Dear listeners, as I said, this is a spiritual discussion program. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail Message by Abdrusheen. And every week we have a topic for discussion. The topic for tonight is the self and mental health. The self and mental health. You are welcome to join us with any questions or comments by contacting us on our UK number, which is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. I'm going to begin with what is the Grail Message? The Grail Message in the Light of Truth by Abdrusheen is a spiritual knowledge of life. It offers an explanation of the world, a picture of creation on the basis of natural laws. Its lectures contain valuable basic elements as a help in life. For through the knowledge mediated, the readers again brought closer to life and led back to God. The Grail Message deals with important fundamental questions of life by explaining in a clear and logical way the automatic working of the laws of nature, the whole weaving of creation, allowing every process to be recognized and thereby the purpose of our whole life. It is directed at the individual and speaks to the innate experiences of the human being, their strengths and weaknesses. Thus, every reader has the opportunity to discover through the intuitive perception if what is stated is the truth. Combining with matter-of-fact reasoning, a complete world picture arises, where there is no separation between the visible world and the great world beyond the five senses, nor any separation between scientific and religious striving for knowledge. I'd like to give you a couple of quotes from the author of the Grail Message, Abdrusheen. The hearer and reader of my lectures should always work within himself, keenly probing and building bridges from one lecture to the other, as well as out into the great and small world happenings. Only then will he be able to understand the Grail Message and find that it gradually shapes itself into one complete whole without leaving any gaps. Again and again, in all the happenings, the reader will come back to the basic features. He can explain everything without having to change even one single sentence. The word of the Grail Message lives so that it permits only those people who really carry the honest desire in their souls to find abundantly. All else is automatically rejected by it. For the arrogant, and those who seek superficially, the message will remain the book with 7 seals. And I'd like to give you one more quote from the author. I wish to fill the gaps which have so far always remained unanswered in the souls of men, and which never leave any serious thinker in peace, if he earnestly seeks for the truth. So, dear listeners, I just want to remind you the topic we're discussing tonight is the self and mental health. You're welcome to join us with any questions or comments by contacting us on our UK number, which is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. Now, Gregory, you know I like to check the meaning in the dictionary of the words in the topic. And tonight's topic, it says the self and mental health. So the word self, it says in the dictionary, a person's essential being that distinguishes them from others, especially considered as the object of introspection or reflexive action. And yeah, let's. What do you think? What do you say about this definition, Gregory?
As with every definition stated in the dictionary, there is the intuitive part. There is the intellectual part, which is the most common and which satisfies curiosity, which satisfies intellectual curiosity. And that is what you have basically with all these dictionary meanings. Only very few of them point to the actual essence of these. But what you yourself just read out is acceptable to a large extent.
Thank you for that. And I'm going to continue. There's another, let's say, part of the definition I'm going to read out. They've given it as an example. Our alienation. Oh, sorry, Greg. Can you be on mute there? Because I'm hearing an echo. Yeah, thanks. So again, another, you could say, example of the words, meaning of the word self. Let me just pick this one. Language is an aspect of a person's sense of self. This is an example they've given there. Language is an aspect of a person's sense of self. Actually, Gregory, maybe you can help us to understand that meaning or example there. I'm not able to work that out. Would you be able to say something about that?
Well, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, in the initial statement that was made, we said there is always the intellectual part, which satisfies basically men's thoughts, men's way of thinking. And then there's the intuitive part, which goes deeper, which is all-embracing. That which you yourself just read out is more like a figure of speech. The language and the self. The language is how the self expresses itself. That self which has an impression on external substances And the external, those who are outside of the self, are able to pick up that signature of the self. Maybe that's why that expression was used.
Thank you for that clarification there, Gregory, and the understanding there. Thank you. Now, I thought, what is the self in my head? What is the self? And 3 or 4 things came into my head, which was mind. Is the self mind? Is it the body? Is it the soul? Is it the spirit? Or maybe even it's a combination of all of those, or some combination. So again, Gregory, I wanted to check in the dictionary before we go further. What are the meaning of these words? Mind, body, soul, and spirit. And I know you already cautioned us that these dictionary meanings can be very intellectual and not intuitive for our understanding for the discussion that we are having. However, I want to still look those things up. So just to see what it says there. So the meaning of the word mind, I found it says the element of a person that enables them to be aware of the world and their experiences, to think and to feel, the faculty of consciousness and thought. So is that a good definition of the word mind?
Again, you will find that what has been expressed there only describes what the mind is, which mind basically is the faculty of reasoning. And that is where you have that the intellect really operates. It is not of spirit, but the faculty of reasoning that man uses intellectually.
Right. So it's the the faculty of reasoning.
Yes.
Okay. Let's go continue. The next word is body. The physical structure, including bones, flesh, and organs of a person or an animal. This discussion is talking about humans, so person we mean. So just repeat that. The meaning of the word body, it says the physical structure, including bones, flesh, and organs. So what do you think of this definition, Gregory?
Basically, what has been read out is one expression of the gross material collection, gross material cloak, which the inner core of man uses to experience here on earth. Basically, that is what is referred to as the body, gross materially. However, one can also talk about the body without the gross material body or the gross material cloak. In that case, we'll be talking of something like the soul, and which has, in fact, different coverings. So all these things are related.
Right. So I will continue. And again, you refer to the word soul, and that is what I found. I looked in the dictionary as well. Soul, and it says the spiritual or immaterial part of a human being. It says or animal, but we're again referring to human. So, and which is regarded as immortal. So the soul is the spiritual or immaterial part of a human being regarded as immortal. Again, Gregory, how is that definition a good definition there?
You now have the immaterial part of the human personality, but the soul is not immortal.
So that's something not correct, right?
Yeah, it is the inner core. It is the spirit
The inner
which
core.
is immortal, but not the soul. For the soul is the inner core of the spirit with its clothing, the outer clothing, the outer cloaks. So when these outer cloaks are shed, then you won't talk about the soul anymore, you talk about the spirit. So you can't say the soul is immortal. It is the spirit which is immortal.
I think, Gregory, I know why this is the definition in dictionary is saying that, because it straight away when you look at the next one word, which is spirit, and I look up the meaning there, you can easily understand why it is defined, the soul is defined as immortal. But let me read out what it says for the meaning of the word spirit. The non-physical part of a person, which is the seat of emotions and character, the soul. So you can see, Gregory, there they're equating the spirit as the soul.
Well, it's understandable that that has been done intellectually. For if the spirit equates to the soul, that means you have two words which refer to the same thing. But that is not the case. Looked at externally, the soul is only the outer cloaks which covers the spirit. Looked at internally, it is the spirit alone that really exists, that is immortal. So, just like you won't say when you put on your cloak, your gross material cloak, that is you. No, that is not you, because you can change the cloak. You can change your dress. In that case, when you change your dress, you now say, oh, this is a different soul. No, it is the same personality that's wearing a different dress. And that is why one is stressed on differentiating the soul, which is the spirit wearing a cloak, and the spirit, which is the inner core proper, without wearing other cloaks.
Thank you so much for this answer there, Gregory, or explanation. So right now we've talked about the self, mind, body, soul, and spirit. There are 5 items that there are. And we say those items of mind, body, soul, and spirit are all part of the self, or make the self, in the sense of operating on the earth, if we have to be accurate. So, but I think you said the core, Gregory, the core of the person or personality is actually the spirit. So that's the real, you could say, living person. And the others are the cloaks, like you mentioned. Soul is a cloak, the body is a cloak, and the mind, I don't think I can call it a cloak, but it's inside the body. So it's a feature of the body. Now, Gregory, the rest, so to repeat the title, listeners, for the discussion tonight is the self and mental health. So obviously we need to know what is mental health. What does that mean? So let me go to that now. In the dictionary, it says mental. Mental means relating to the mind, but then what does that mean? Or when it's okay, and then they looked at. Let me just check here. If I put the word mental health together, and then look that up in the dictionary, it says relating to disorders of the mind. For example, mental health, it can be mental illness, mad, or insane. I think he was example give. I think he was a little worried that I might be mental. So And then just to go to the word health itself, I will check that as well. Um, I just want to think if I want to. Gregory, let me go to you before I do that. So this word definition I've used found in the dictionary, Gregory, for mental. Is that sufficient for our discussion, or is there anything you need to add or subtract there?
If you use the word mental, that means a reference is made to the seat of the intellect, and that which is above the intellect, or that which is making use of the intellect, which is of spirit, will not be discussed. So mental is limited, the scope is tied to the capabilities of the intellect.
Right. So you're saying mental doesn't cover the whole human being. It's one aspect only.
It only covers the human personality that has use of the physical body.
Right. So mental is in reference to the when we do physical body, use this physical body. Right. Okay. Now then, I want to look at the other word there, Gregory, health. And it says the meaning in the dictionary for health, the state of being free from illness or injury. Um, yeah. Another way they put it, a person's mental or physical condition when you're referring to health. So, what do you say about this one, Gregory?
Like we discussed earlier, these things are highly tied. These definitions and references are highly tied to the thoughts of men, to the intellect of man. Whereas what we are concerned here is the well-being of the individual. So health, as such, must be considered in regards to the well-being of the individual.
Right. Thank you for that um, answer. And then, Gregory, I sort of touched on mental health as the one word you can say, but now I want to read something again in my research I found, sort of meanings of mental health or how mental health impacts us as human beings. So here's one thing I found. Mental health can impact an individual in various ways. It can affect their ability to sleep, eat, make decisions. Mental health conditions can also impact an individual's emotional and psychological well-being, leading to excessive fears, worries, and delusions. Mental health can also impact an individual's personal relationships and social life, leading to social exclusion. Self-care techniques and lifestyle changes can help manage the symptoms of many mental health problems. Um, I know this may seem out of context, but I think I found that from an NHS website, because obviously health is something the concern of the NHS, the National Health Service. So that's what I found there, I think, if I remember correctly. Now, so Gregory, as I know you already pointed out, the mental health is referring to the physical well-being, you can say, but the real well-being, when we are supposed to talk about a human being, is or you say individual well-being. I've actually, if you can add to what I just, if you can say something more about that, Gregory. So we have the mental health well-being, which is to do with the physical aspect of the human being. And then there's the individual well-being. Can you say more on that?
Strictly speaking, when mental health is discussed, there is the well-being. of the individual. That individual, the inner core of which is of spirit, wears the physical cloak as the human body on which we have the five senses that man uses for experiencing. So in that particular case, you find whilst here on earth, what is key is the gross material physical body in which you have the five senses for experiencing, and also one's thoughts. The spirit is separate, and it is expected that there must be a balance or a harmony between the inner core, the outer core, which consists of one's thoughts, that means the seat of the intellect, and finally the gross material manifestation. So you will find that which the NHS has referred to as mental health only talks basically of the gross material physical body, and to a very narrow extent one's thoughts. Once there is no harmony there, then the NHS can discuss so much about it. But that which is of spirit, it lacks the capability because it does not yet recognize what it is.
Thank you, Gregory, for your answer and the picture you painted there. So I think if I understood you correctly, there were three aspects there of the human being. You could say, activity or working in this on the earth. So there's the let's start. There's the spirit, and no, let's start the other way. So there's you could say the physical body, the gross material body, and I'm trying to remember exactly what you said there. So that is operating basically with physical activities. Obviously, it operates in the physical world, and so you have your the five senses. I remember now. You said that using the five senses, and then there's the thoughts, which come from the Gregory, can we say the source of the thoughts are the brain, the mind?
The source of the thoughts, one, of course, is of the brain, of the mind. All this is categorized as belonging to the intellect.
Right. And then there's the spirit, which is separate from the, you could say, the physical.
The spirit is of a different category, of an alien category to that of the mind. Only through the vibrations of the spirit or the vibrations of the intellect, only through these vibrations, this radiation, can it have an impact or an effect on the intellect or on one's mind. Just like you and I are discussing, you are very far off from where I am, but the effects of the vibrations, of the so-called electrical vibrations, is propagated through space, and you are able to interpret it, or through phones or other electrical materials. But that does not mean that you and I are in the same room or in the same place. We're in different places. And you can communicate with me, and I can communicate with you. So that is a very little semblance of the spirit and the mind.
Now, Gregory, I remember you said that the spirit is immortal, and also we said immaterial. And right now we've been talking about material. Sorry, I don't mean like only material. We've been referring or looking at um, the body and the mind being gross material or material, as we can put it in a simple way, and we said that is separate from the spirit, which is immaterial. I think we only mentioned it once, I think. So it's a different immaterial, which is like not material, and yet this spirit, which is immaterial and which is also immortal, is able to work with material and operate this mind and the body. And I know you gave the example of this, how we are communicating right now. You are in another place, and I'm, let's say, a different place from you, and yet we have the technology, which is a material technology, to communicate with each other and, of course, our listeners. So we are able to come together like that. And you were making, can I say, not inference, but a point that basically this spirit, the personality, is able to use this mind, the material mind and the body. But you said it's something similar, you can say. But obviously there's a difference with all that we talk here. The technology is material technology, but the spirit is not material. So can you help us a little more, a bit more, to explain that?
One has used the term category. The category, when spirit is mentioned, is different from that category when the mind or the intellect is mentioned. The mode of communication of that which is of spirit, which is spiritual, is the intuitive perception. The mode of communication of that which is of mind is the gross material thoughts. Just as we ourselves can think, we have thoughts, but we cannot hold our thoughts in our hands, neither can we smell them, neither can we see the color, but these thoughts have an impact on our personality, have an impact on how we carry out our activities gross materially. Our thoughts have an impact or have an effect. Just as you have that, so also that which is of spirit through one's intuitive perception. It is that perception or that perceptive radiation that has an impact on man's thoughts. If along the line, or in the case where you have this intuitive perception harmonizing, that means having a strong impression on one's thoughts, and the thoughts conforming to this particular perception, to this particular intuitive perception, then it is said to be in harmony. And therefore, that which the spirit wishes to communicate to one's thoughts becomes perceptible. Otherwise, it is not perceptible. In the same way, when you have that our thoughts, once you have the scenario when our thoughts have an impact on how we do our things gross materially, then we will say that they are in harmony. But don't forget, man can be thinking in one way and his deeds are in complete at variance with what he's doing. That is very well known in the case of deception. So, in that case, you would not regard one's thoughts to harmonize with one's deeds. So, you can see there are two different things. In the same way, you have that unless you have a determined human personality with strong intuitive perception, those perceptions may not have an impression on our thoughts. Or even if they do have an impression, it may be ignored. And in that case, many will now say, well, I don't know what has come over me.
Thank you very much, Gregory, for your answer and picture and explanation that you painted there. We will explore it further in a moment. Just want to let the listeners know you're listening to Bless Radio. It's a Tuesday evening spiritual discussion program. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail Message by Abrushi. And if you are interested to know more about the Grail Message or want to get a copy of the Grail Message for yourself, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that. www.grail, Grail, message, message.com. And the topic we're discussing tonight is the self and mental health. The self and mental health. You can join in the discussion with any questions or comments by contacting us on our UK number, which is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And we are broadcasting on Bless Radio 1. That's the number one.com. You can also listen to us on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and type in the search box Bless Radio 1, again number one, space, live stream. That's for the live show. You can also listen to the recording of this show the next day, also on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and type in the search box Bless Radio 1, again the number one there, space, Grail Message, space, the topic of the show, which tonight is the self and mental health. And of course, you can listen to our previous shows as well, also on YouTube. Thirdly, we are broadcasting on Zeno. That's ZENO.FM/Bless Radio 1. That's the number one again. Now, Gregory, this is a very big topic that we've uh, chosen to discuss on tonight, the self and mental health. And we have already noticed the self. This is the human being, of course, we're talking about as the self. Um, as you could say, works in. Well, you mentioned the word cloaks that we're wearing as a personality, as a human being. We're wearing a number of cloaks, which is, you could say, driven or, yeah, you could say, enlivened. I don't quite know exactly the right word to use, through the spirit, the living immortal being. You can call it that way, I guess. And that is operating on the earth with all these, the five senses of the body, and then our thoughts, which come from the mind. And then there's the spirit, which is, driving or supposed to work in harmony with the body and the mind. And that is using the intuition. So, and as you just mentioned just before when I talked about the radio show tonight, that you can have sometimes your, let's say, real motive, or what you really want to do, you can hide that behind your physical actions and deeds. You can act in a particular way, but actually you mean the opposite of that. And let's say not everybody is going to probably be aware what's happening there when you're doing the opposite of what you actually want to do. So it really is quite something. But I want to now sort of go through some cases. When I say cases, I'm talking about mental health a bit more now, because this topic of mental health has become quite widely discussed in the world, especially when since COVID-19 hit, although it was known already, but it somehow has affected a lot of more people in different ways, because there was a lockdown and people were forced to stay at home, work from home. Children also couldn't go to school. I'm talking about UK. I'm not sure if it happened in other countries, but for sure it happened in UK. They couldn't go to school, and it seems to have had in some children, quite a terrible impact, that they even haven't returned to school even now, some of them. And because somehow this is not about COVID itself, it's not that they got COVID, but somehow the side effect of being stuck at home or not being able to socialize or be with your fellow human beings seem to have, for some human beings, had quite a terrible impact. And obviously they're thinking this is some mental illness here. So, Gregory, can you throw any light on this matter? What happened really, to certain people, that they have been affected in this way?
It is difficult to discuss these matters because one has not read any article as to how these things affected their so-called mental health. But if you have scenarios that may be discussed, yes. Because you do find each person differs. There are some who found it very helpful that they had to stay at home instead of the normal morning run and whatever. So it varies from person to person. So it would be nice if the NHS could come out with the scenarios which they themselves had experienced in their clinical activities, so that it may be looked into intuitively.
Thank you very much for saying that, Gregory. What I will say is, I'm not aware the NHS has looked into this matter. What I found was there was a Sky reporter who specially sort of met some individuals who had suffered this, let's say in certain families and children. But I must admit, when I watched the report and they showed the people there, Uh, nobody could say what was causing. There was no sort of hint or clue of what the issues were, except what they could see was actually happening. And all I can give you the story, but I'm not sure it's really going to help to make any answer, give any picture in it. Basically, this particular child, the father was taking him, driving him to the school, and he got him all ready, which is, what you expect. And then when he gets to sit in the car, the child somehow getting upset that he doesn't want to even sort of go any further from just step out of the house and only sit in the car, and he feels like he doesn't want to go there. And it can be like not every day that is the case. Some days he's okay. So it's like a weird thing. Sometimes he can go, sometimes he can't go, and there's no the child himself is not able to say what's going on. He just doesn't feel somehow comfortable to go there. It's like a really strange type of thing, and so it looks like nobody really has a clue what's going on, and the parent who's supposed to know the child the best, the most, they haven't got a clue either. So all it seems is they're let's put it this way. They looked at the figures, but I don't have it to hand now. Let's say there were 5% before the COVID pandemic. 5% of the children, maybe is too high, but let's say it was 5% were not attending school for whatever reason, and then they seem to have doubled. So as I say, I might be wrong about the actual number, but that's what they said. The number of children missing from the school was double after the COVID had finished than before. Again, as you say, Gregory, there's no real, and this is just a few. This reporter managed to speak to maybe one or two people, but and I think this is the only one they could find with more clarity in it. But again, there was no answer there. So it was like just reporting something's happened rather than why or what clue can be. So maybe Gregory will just. Do you want to say anything on that, or shall we just move again forward?
It would have been best if there were specifics, which specifics outlined what might have happened then.
Yes.
In that case, it is possible to examine the whole scenario, because you now have that the case of children who were going to school before the COVID, and then the case during COVID where that stopped, the cases after COVID. So these are three different scenarios which have not been considered very well. The impact of socialization, of the lack of socialization, and then the sudden change. All this, of course, will have an impact on any person, and depending on the strength of that person, how that person is, the person's strength mentally, the person's strength spiritually, the person's strength gross materially. These are different categories which must be considered, and that is why it is very elusive to take a case which is not well established and start discussing it. There could be other reasons.
Yes.
So sometimes it's best left alone until it has been very well established. Then it might be examined. Else it would be preposterous to, start giving reasons and trying to explain something which, strictly speaking, may not even be mentioned at all, because children behave differently. A child going to school today may not want to go to school tomorrow because he wants to play football with his friends at home, or he has watched some World Cup and he thinks he's now the best player. So you now ask him, he doesn't want to go. Fair enough. Or you might be playing with some toys, and he's now used to toys, and he doesn't, during the COVID, he was very happy with it, Now you want him to abandon his choice. So there are varied reasons that could make children behave that way.
Thank you for this. What you have answered there, Gregory. So what I'll do, I'll now go to something, an example really, which is more well known, you can say. So no, obviously we are aware there's a war going on in Ukraine, in Russia fighting Ukraine. But this is not specifically for that particular war. It can be any war. And we know, Gregory, in the war that the people, civilians and both military personnel fighting are seriously affected by injuries and killings, of course, with the damage to infrastructure around them. And, and the point is that they have some very deep, these situations bring about some very deep impressions to those who are affected, in this wars. And some can go into depression, others into silence. Some are driven to overcome it, actually, whatever negative impact that it puts on them, then, and this is, now, what I want to ask about this is when people are suffering this type of experiences, how can they sort of, I'm going to say survive in the sense of staying sane, because it's, to have that constantly, seeing, either fellow people or your own family, getting injured or killed, it has a deep effect on the person, how can one, as I said, they can turn into completely silent, and just to never mention what is happening, or even depression. So how can one who's suffering this type of thing can overcome it or survive it?
Most of the time, you find the scenario which you mentioned, the case of war, where there are very horrible injuries, which injuries can also lead to deaths of many, and that scenario causes a shock. That shock, which the personality was not prepared for. The personality could be that of a relative or a close friend, because that person was not prepared for it, and all of a sudden it happened, led to shock. In that case, you have that the human personality, that is the spirit itself, the radiations of that spirit itself has been impacted with what has happened gross materially. And because the contact, the harmony between the influence of one's intuition and the way one lives on earth, there had been no connection, and all of a sudden, that connection is established, and a sense of loss strikes the personality so very deeply that that personality is in shock. It takes time for that personality to come around gradually. And that being the case, you have the scenarios of one in terrible moods or one not being understood. But again, these things, they all vary very much from person to person. Whereas for those who have been in that state of anarchy like soldiers, many are really not bothered because they had prepared themselves for such. Whereas the civilians who have not prepared themselves suffer these shocks and also some physical injury. The shocks which one is referring to are like injuries on the soul. They are like injuries on the non-material parts of the human personality. That is where the shock is. And such injuries persist for quite some time before one gets over it. So that's why you find some of these things.
Thank you for your answer, Gregory. What it made me think there, Gregory, you're talking about injuries, that the physical injuries, if your leg is broken or whatever injury, they sort of heal in time. But these, I don't know what word to use, emotional or mental, if I can call them injuries, they are not so easy to, because the memory and somehow it triggers your mind, if I can say, into sadness or whatever. It impacts you much more than the physical injury. Maybe that's sort of common sense to understand that, but somehow, as I said, this mental illness wasn't, but maybe, let's say, I was going to say in recent times, it wasn't considered so deeply, or don't know how to put it exactly, but I'm just starting to think, and there used to be mental hospitals even 100 years ago. I'm pretty sure on that. So it was, people were looking at these things to for people to be healed, because as I say, it affect them quite deeply. But obviously, the mental illness injury, if you can say, definitely seems to take longer than the physical injuries. But that people, if they broke a leg or something like that. So is there, Gregory, like you said, there are different categories. There's the body, and then there's the thoughts, and then there's the spirit. So maybe the thoughts, we're talking about the mind here, so it's the thoughts, but that's where that world is, how can I say, more sensitive. Can you say more on that?
Could you repeat what you just said?
Yes, what I'm saying is the mental illness injuries have more serious effect or wider effect than physical, and it lasts longer than the physical. So is there something special about mental illness that that is more sensitive?
That which is finer and it has an impact on the human personality, that basically one could refer to as one's thoughts. Once you consider the case of a betrayal, when there's a case of a betrayal, how soon does the human personality get over it? As compared to, okay, there was an injury, right? You were walking along and you stumbled and fell and had a little scratch. For many, they won't even think about the scratch, one of those things. Look for some medication, put into it, and it's gone. But in the case of a betrayal, things of that nature, for one had trusted another, and then there's this betrayal, you find that it lingers on because it is finer. It has to do with not only intellectual, not only with our thoughts, but something more than that, which has an impact on the soul. So these impressions sometimes also hover above the thoughts of men. And in that particular case, they are in a different plane. So it takes quite some time for the personality to adjust itself in the case of betrayal. The same thing happens in the case of a loss or of a sudden loss. Because in that case, there was the personality that you could communicate with, and in a twinkle of an eye, that person is no more. So the exchange of information, the exchange of thoughts, the exchange of intuitions are not easily and not perceptible unless one had been at the initial stage being very intuitive and is able to perceive more than that which is mere physical. In that case, that personality is able to perceive of the presence or the non-presence of the other that has departed. But more of this, many who are discerning, they can check, examine thoroughly and rigorously the work in the light of truth, the Grail Message. There, all these things are explained very excellently, so that the human personality, we know the structure of nature, the structure of creation, so that he or she knows where he or she belongs in creation and why it is here. Such that these things which perturb many a person, mental problems and all that, they will now know the source of these so-called mental problems and quietly know how to avoid them.
Thank you so much, Gregory, for your answer there. I just want to let the listeners know this is Bless Radio, and this is the spiritual discussion program from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. UK time. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail Message by Uprishin. And if you wish to know more about the Grail Message or want to get a copy of the Grail Message for yourself, then you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that. www.grail, Grail, message, message.com. And the topic we're discussing tonight is the self and mental health. The self and mental health. You're welcome to join us with any questions or comments by contacting us on our UK number, which is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And we're broadcasting on Bless Radio 1. That's the number 1.com. Also, you can listen to us on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and type in the search box Bless Radio 1. That's the number 1 again. Space live stream. That's for the live show. You can listen to the recording of this show also on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and type in the search box Bless Radio 1. That's the number 1 again. Space Grail Message. Space the topic of the show, which tonight is the self and mental health. And of course, you can listen to our recordings of our previous shows as well, also on YouTube. Thirdly, we're broadcasting on Zeno. That's ZENO.FM / Bless Radio 1. That's the number one again. Now, Gregory, now there's some famous spiritual teachers that have given lots of, let's say, I don't know if the word is advice, but made many statements, and which, in a way, when people hear them, are they're trying to help us to change, let's say, where things are what we see as negative events in our life, to turn them round and change our thinking. And what I would like to do is give maybe an example or two on that, just for us to have an idea. So I have picked here, this person is called Eckhart Tolle, and he has written a book called A New Earth. And he's talking in this part called about carrying the past. The inability, or rather unwillingness, of the human mind to let go of the past is beautifully illustrated in the story of the two Zen monks, Tanzan and Ekaido, who were walking along a country road that had become extremely muddy after heavy rains. Near a village, they came upon a young woman who was trying to cross the road, but the mud was so deep it would have ruined the silk kimono she was wearing. Tanzan at once picked her up and carried her to the other side. The monks walked on in silence. 5 hours later, as they were approaching the lodging temple, Akaido couldn't restrain himself any longer. "Why did you carry that girl across the road?" he asked. "We monks are not supposed to do things like that." "I put the girl down hours ago," said Tanzan. "Are you still carrying her?" Now, imagine what life would be like for someone who lived like Akaido all the time, unable or unwilling to let go internally of situations and accumulating more and more stuff inside. You get a sense of what life is like for the majority of people on our planet. So, I mean, that is really incredible, you could say, story there. Simple illustration of how we carry the past. Now, there's a second part to this, um, continuing, so I want to read that. I think I will read it. It's a bit long, but I will read it. It says, again, it says, carrying the past continued. The past lives in you as memories, but memories themselves are not a problem. In fact, it is through memory that we learn from the past and from the past mistakes. It is only when memories, that is to say, thoughts about the past, take you over completely that they turn into a burden, turn problematic, and become part of your sense of self. Your personality, which is conditioned by the past, then becomes your prison. Your memories are invested with a sense of self, and your story becomes who you perceive yourself to be. This little me is an illusion that obscures your true identity as a timeless and formless presence. Your story, however, consists only of mental but also emotional memory, old emotion that is being revived continuously, as in the case of the monk who carried the burden of his resentment for 5 hours by feeding it with his thoughts. Most people carry a large amount of unnecessary baggage, both mental and emotional, throughout their lives. They limit themselves through grievances, regret, hostility, guilt. The emotional thinking has become their self. And so they hang on to the old emotion because it strengthens their identity. Because of the human tendency to perpetuate old emotion, almost everyone carries in his or her energy field an accumulation of old emotional pain, which I call the pain body. We can, however, stop adding to the pain body that we already have. We can learn to break the habit of accumulating and perpetuating old emotion by flapping our wings, metaphorically speaking, and refrain from mentally dwelling on the past, regardless of whether something happened yesterday or 30 years ago. We can learn to keep situations or events alive in our minds, but return our attention continuously to the pristine, timeless present moment, rather than be caught up in the mental movie making. Our very presence then becomes our identity rather than our thoughts and emotion. Nothing happened in the past that can prevent you from being present now. And if the past cannot prevent you from being present now, what power does it have? So that's Eckhart Tolle from his book A New Earth. Gregory, anything you want to say about these words?
The words you yourself read out were referred to as basically mental, which is intellectual. One was expecting one would hear or perceive of that which is of deep intuitive impression. Since deep intuitive impression is lacking, then whatever writing there is does not hold firm. For the mental pictures which are highly intellectual, which is referred to, if those mental pictures have an injury on the person, then it is painful. If those mental pictures were like music, which is soothing to the soul, then it is right for one to hold on to that which is of benefit to the individual in one's soul and use that as a guidance. The only thing one may say to such as you read out is that you have a scenario where intellectual mental pictures are held again and again and dissected, and no lesson, no impression is passed on to the spirit to take as experience, such that when it's on its journey, it is able to use that experience to mature. It's able to use that experience to steer itself. Therein lies the problem. But if experiences, gross material experiences, are of no value to the person, that means they do not have an impact on the spirit. It is, in that case, useless. If, on the other hand, they have a strong impact on one's intuition, which the spirit takes away in its journey, then that is an experience which will be beneficial later, here on earth or hereafter. For the human personality is here on earth to experience and to learn from these experiences.
Thank you so much, Gregory, for your answer there. it's quite clear from what you have said, and you know, we hold on to things um, from the past, you know, and not move on, just because somehow there's something we are affected by, and we are just holding on to that, and not, and then we can't because we are not living in the present, if I can say that way. We are focused only on the past, and that's blocking us from going forward, and living now. And of course you can see that very well. In fact, uh, just before the radio show, I found this very inspirational, you could say, quote, and it's about smile. Smile is the cooling system of the heart, sparkling system of the eyes, lighting system of the face, relaxing system of the mind. So activate the system. So active the whole system with your. So yeah, I would say activate all your system with your sweet smile. And it's such a simple. Like, I think it's written like a poem there, but it's so simple message there. Straight away you feel uplifted and cheery. A simple smile. It is the cooling system of the heart. Is sparkling system of the eyes, lighting system of the face, relaxing system of the mind. So activate all this system with your sweet smile. Now, let me ask you something else now, Gregory. I mean, you've in your previous answer, you also mentioned, Gregory, there's you could say, our earthly daily activities and so on, and there's you could say, how we respond spiritually to these activities. And but if we allow the spirit, you could say, to just smile, if I can say that way, then all these experiences, which are earthly experiences, which are tough, you could say challenging or hard experiences, you wouldn't dwell on them, and you would just bear them, if I can say that way, with some, even if they're hard and tough, you can see, let's say you would see like a bigger picture. Oh, this is life, you have up and down, and yes, you keep going, and that's, you could say, is the message there. Now, so what I want to talk about now, Gregory, is like, again, it's a bit of the earthly current events that people are going through and suffering. And they call it the cost of living crisis at the moment. That's what the words they're using, where the prices of the daily, essential items like food and energy have been increasing rapidly, and people don't have the income to cover all their expenses. And I think it's happening worldwide. I think I can say that. And the government is giving some support in UK for some people to bear this cost, but it's not, okay, let's say, enough to cover let's say, everything. So, and even the government is saying, bear with it. And I can't remember the exact phrase that was used, but basically it implied bearing with it, and for this time. And then the measures they put in will eventually supposed to stabilize this economy and bring through stability. Now, the thing is, Gregory, that's in the future that things might change and become more stable, or more, let's say, livable. But then the people now, they are getting stressed out with the pressures, the earthly pressures, and they're having to struggle. So again, with regard to mental illness, is there a way, like, say, to go through this struggle through maybe prayer and to just allow you to mind to somehow, I don't know if I can use the word relax, but somehow ease the pain on your mind and the stress through prayer?
The accumulation of events, which events, the origin, many do not still understand. It is this accumulation of events that overwhelms many a person. This accumulation overwhelms man's capacity to judge intellectually. However, these accumulations does not overwhelm the intuitive perceptions of man, for the spirit is capable of more, is able to handle these accumulation of events. It is because the individual has not used his or her intuition very effectively. And that is why you have that in these scenarios, these events seem to overwhelm it. Else, it would have prepared itself beforehand to know how to handle these type of scenarios, or in the worst case scenario, even avoid them or prevent them. But what has always happened is that the time for preparation to be able to deal with challenges, these period of preparation are wasted on trivialities. And then, when the events of an accumulation of different scenarios come all of a sudden, because of the lack of preparation, then you have what many refer to as a mental case. This lack of preparation could be first by the individual, or by a group of individuals, or by the state itself. For the possibility is always there to be proactive, to prepare oneself. A simple example is the case of having food, having to store one's grain away in the time of abundance, and in the time of lean abundance, the possibility is there to bring out that which has been stored. If, however, in the time of abundance, nothing was stored away, you can now imagine what happens when there is very little that is about there. So it is that which causes worries. The human personality, by which it is the inner core of man, the human spirit one is referring to, is granted that ability to make decisions. That is what is referred to as free will. It might use it proactively through its vigorous activities spiritually, through its vigorous activities in the thought, that is intellectually, and also through its vigorous activities gross materially. So you have a scenario where the spirit that is austere is able to have a strong impression in one's thoughts, that means it resonates or harmonizes the signals passed on from the spirit, is very well noted by one's thoughts, and in that scenario, one's thoughts also have a strong impression on one's deeds in preparation of that which initially is still not very clear, but there is the preparation of putting things aside. In that particular case, you will find when there's an accumulation of woes, that personality who has prepared himself or herself is less impacted adversely as compared to those who did nothing. So basically, the solution to these challenges, whether they call it mental issues or non-mental issues, is to ensure one is awake in spirit. One must learn to be able to make use of one's intuition. To make use of one's intuition, that means to allow it to have a strong impression on one's thoughts. And allow the thoughts to have a strong impression on one's deeds. Not that one's deeds are at variance with one's thoughts, or one's thoughts are at variance with one's intuition. In that case, you have the quagmire. You have the categories of quagmire, like that of a mental case, or mental challenge, or mental health, whatever they care to call it. Not only mental, but also non-mental in the case of gross material. So these things are there. As long as the human personality is asleep, then there will be a preponderance of these events hitting the human personality again and again. Only when it is awake and tries to respond to the challenges, even before they manifest gross materially, only then will he or she be alive. And many things which would have taken place would have been prevented.
Thank you so much, Gregory, for your answer there. In the picture you're painting for us. You've been talking about challenges there. And I want to ask, can we overcome every challenge, or are some challenges too much to bear?
When you say every challenge, one may ask, is it a physical challenge? Is it a challenge in one's thoughts? Is it a challenge in one's intuition? If it is a challenge in one's thoughts, the possibility is there to re-evaluate that which one has held on to for quite some time. If it is a challenge, say, in gross material physicality, the possibility is there if the impact has not completely decimated the person. It is possible for the individual to re-evaluate and change its ways. It is when one has made an inner change in one's thoughts, an inner change in one's intuition, only then can one say one is able to overcome. In fact, One will not even use the word overcome. It is said prevention is better than cure. So many a thing can easily be prevented rather than falling into the scenario and then start struggling to get out of it. It is best to find a way to prevent an injury in one's gross material physical body, an injury in one's thoughts or in one's intuition, by being proactive, by being aware, by examining all that comes our way and try to make sense of it.
Thank you so much for that answer there, Gregory. Uh, Dear listeners, I want to let you know you're listening to Bless Radio. It's the Tuesday evening spiritual discussion program. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail Message by Abdrusheen. And if you wish to know more about the Grail Message or want to get a copy of the Grail Message for yourself, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that www.grail, Grail, message, message.com. And the topic we are discussing tonight is the self and mental health. You can join in the discussion by contacting us on our UK number, which is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And we're broadcasting on Bless Radio 1. That's the number 1.com. You can also listen to us on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and type in the search box Bless Radio 1, again the number 1, space, live stream. That's for the live show. You can listen to the recording of this show the next day, also on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and type in the search box Bless Radio 1, that's the number 1 again, space, Grail Message, space, the topic of the show, which tonight is the self and mental health. You can also listen to our previous shows also on YouTube. Thirdly, we are broadcasting on Zeno, that's ZENO.FM / Bless Radio 1. That's the number 1 again. Now, Gregory, I think I'm going to, yes, let me, I was going to ask a couple of other questions, but let me start with this one. It's not a question, actually, at the moment. I'm going to read something from the Bible where Jesus spoke, and this is from Matthew chapter 6, verses 24 to 34. And this first part is titled, You Cannot Serve God and Riches. This is Jesus speaking. No one can serve two masters, for either he will hate one and love the other, or else he will be loyal to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and Mammon. Now, I didn't know what Mammon means, but I looked it up in the Google dictionary, and it says it's a biblical term for riches, often used to describe the debasing influence of material wealth. So, Gregory, anything you'd like to say on that point? Those words?
sometimes these expressions, or most times these expressions, must be understood, albeit intuitively. And the context in which it is used by Jesus himself must be understood. If the context he meant was that the service of riches, which riches only mean material or devotion to material gain, then that will have an impact on the spiritual gain of man. If, however, those riches he himself was referring to, which might have been misquoted, if these riches are that of the spirit in which the human personality, through its activities, is able to gain so much spiritually in the service of others, then it is well and good. So, whatever comes from Christ must be well quoted by those who wrote these things. But you will find in many cases those who translated this presented all this in a one-sided manner, and that which should have been profitable to the human personality is left aside.
Thank you for that, Gregory. So what I'm going to do is, because I stopped at that first, you could say, sentence, because I just want, it was like a point that Jesus was making. But now I'm going to reread that sentence and continue the whole rest of this, you could say, warnings by Jesus. So here's Jesus speaking. No one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will be loyal to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and Mammon. Therefore, I say to you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or what you will drink, nor about your body, what you will put on. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothing? Look at the birds of the air, for they neither sow nor reap, nor gather into barns, yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not of more value than they? Which of you, by worrying, can add 1 cubit to his stature? So, why do you worry about clothing? Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin. And yet I say to you that even Solomon, in all his glory, was never arrayed like one of these. Now, if God so clothes the grass of the field, which today and tomorrow is thrown into the oven, will he not much more clothe you, O you of little faith? Therefore, do not worry, saying, what shall we eat? Or what shall we drink? Or what shall we wear? For all these things the Gentiles seek. For your heavenly Father knows that you need all these things. But seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about its own things. Sufficient for the day is its own trouble. Now, Gregory, is Jesus saying to us, forget about earthly things and just seek the kingdom of God in heaven?
He could never have said such. The context is what is missing. And the context is made very clear on first things first. First things as was given in the Ten Commandments, where striving to ennoble oneself in accordance with the will of the Almighty is the first step. It is that striving that polishes the inner personality such that all that it needs to survive gross materially will be directed towards him or her, in the sense, through his activities, he will come to realize that which he needs for his own spiritual maturity, for his own gross material existence here on earth, and therefore will not accumulate so-called earthly riches for the sake of it. In that case, the earthly riches becomes a burden to the human spirit and is unable to sever itself when the time comes for it to return back to its home. Therefore, the context must be taken very seriously. And that is why, as at the time he spoke, at that time, the people of Israel already had the Ten Commandments. The fourth commandment was made very clear. I am the Lord. And he went forward and all that. That was the fourth and the key commandment. All others are in support to ensure that the human spirit is not entangled in its activities here on earth. That was the time of Moses, when they were led out of Egypt. When Christ came, he gave the Lord's Prayer. And in the Lord's Prayer, he made it very clear. He started similar to what had in the Ten Commandments, our Father. So you could see that his presentation is typical of that which leads upwards, which leads to the luminous heights, which enables the human spirit that has matured here on earth to ascend. For in the final analysis, the so-called riches, or the over-accumulation of the so-called riches, not one material thing is taken along when the human spirit needs to leave the earth. It remains where it is. Only the experiences it has gathered, that is what it takes within its soul in order to journey along its path. If those experiences have been of benefit, that means they swung in accordance with the will of the Almighty, then they would have brought benefit not only to the individual, but also the neighbors of the individual. Which neighbors could be the environment in which that individual is, the environment in thought, the environment in deeds, and all the environment in his intuition. That being the case, the reciprocal activity accruing out of that supports, pushes the human personality upward towards the light. Basically, that was what Christ was referring to.
Thank you so much, Gregory, for your answer there. Um, I've got a few questions more, but I'm trying to pick one of them, which would be more, let's say, yeah. Now, Gregory, I want to ask, is every person mentally ill to some extent because we are not able or willing to live in harmony with nature and our fellow human beings? So is everybody, Gregory, mentally ill to some extent?
For those who are unable to use their intuition aright, the scenario is that many an event is ascribed to our thoughts or to our intellect. That means the human personality is unable to mature as it should spiritually, as it should emotionally. In that case, when you have an accumulation of events that seem to overwhelm the capabilities of our thoughts, that seem to overwhelm the capabilities of our intellect, then the intellect is confused. The intellect is shocked. In that case, it's as if it's in crisis. It is that crisis which is referred to as mental health. For that which is mental has to do with one's thoughts. These thoughts are in confusion. It's unable to respond to the challenges which has beguiled it, albeit gross materially, or sometimes basically in thought. And it has given too much preference to all these trivial things and has wasted much of its strength on that which is not beneficial.
Thank you so much for this answer there, Gregory. Now, I think we know that we already said the mental problem is to do with the mind and thoughts. So I was going to ask you, how do we resolve it? Should we seek out psychologists for therapy or study self-help guide or attend courses or go to retreats where where we have to deal with our past and that our thinking shifts away from this, our selfish or maybe fixed views, yeah. So how do we resolve this mental health problem?
Very simply, the roots of this mental health has been that of the overuse of the mental capacity of man. Therefore, a solution will be the reliance on one's intuition along the line, again and again. That is the challenge which each personality has to deal with. Unless those people that they wish to approach have a solution which is non-mental. That means they have a solution which borders on one's intuition. It would be wrong to ask others to give to you what they themselves lack. Therefore, there are enough examples in nature for he or she who aspires for that which is good and noble, for he or she who desires that which is noble, very simply, should strive to become noble himself through his activities in giving that which he or she has. In doing that, there will definitely be return. That giving must come from the inner parts of man, the deep inner part which is of spirit, sensing the challenges of others who are not as fortunate as he himself or herself. In that particular scenario, because that has resonated, the challenges of others has resonated within himself or herself. And in striving to reach out for others, to be of use to others, in reciprocal activity, in gross material deeds, in reciprocal activity, in our thoughts, in reciprocal activity, in our intuitions and in spirit, others we strive to reach out to us in the same measure as we ourselves have reached out to others who are not as fortunate as ourselves. That is the biggest challenge that the human personality has to go through.
Thank you for that answer there, Gregory. I just want to mention something I found online about this famous, you could say, philosopher called Krishnamurti, but this quote I've been told, is not necessarily the exact words, but you could say accumulation of sort of statements he has made. So they point to the similar, you could say, what he's talking, how he sort of expresses himself on this point about the mental health, or let's say, like I said, resolving the problem from mental health. So, so I'm going to say this quote, which is not necessarily the real quote, but is something from here. You could say a version of that he has made statements about, similar statements he's made. So, and as I said, the speaker here is called, his name is Krishnamurti, and he lived in the 1900s. So the quote says, "The pursuit of a psychoanalyst has become a hobby of the well-to-do. You may not go to a psychoanalyst, but you go through the same process in a different way when you look to a religious organization, to a leader or a discipline to free you from fixations, inhibitions, and complexes. These methods may succeed in creating superficial effects, but they inevitably develop new resistances against the movement of life. No person or technique can free one from these limitations. To experience that freedom, one must comprehend life deeply and discern for oneself the process of creating and maintaining ignorance and illusion. This demands alertness and keen perception, not the mere acceptance of a technique. But as one is slothful, one depends on another for comprehension, and thereby increase sorrow and confusion. The comprehension of this process of ignorance and its self-sustaining activities can alone bring about deep, abiding bliss." So these are the words, it is claimed, have been spoken by Krishnamurti. Seems to be quite wise words there. Anything you would like to say on that, Gregory?
Those words are helpful.
Great. Thank you very much. Now, dear listeners, we've come to the end of the show tonight, on the topic of the self and mental health. And I hope you have enjoyed the discussion and sharing um, the understanding from the Grail message. So, what I'd like to do now to end is to read you from the foreword of the Grail message, which is titled "For Your Guidance." The bandage falls, and belief becomes conviction. Liberation and redemption lie only in conviction. I'm addressing earnest seekers only. They must be able and willing to examine this matter objectively. Religious fanatics and irresponsible enthusiasts may hold aloof, for they are detrimental to the truth. As for the malevolent and prejudiced, they shall find their sentence in the very words. The message will strike only those who still carry within them a spark of truth and the yearning to be true human beings. To all such it will become the shining light and star. It will lead them unswervingly out of all the chaos of the present-day confusion. The following word does not bring a new religion, but is intended as the torch to help all serious listeners or readers find the right path, which leads them to the longed-for height. Only he who bestirs himself can advance spiritually. The fool who uses extraneous aids for this, in the form of ready-made opinions of others, only walks his path as if on crutches, while ignoring his own healthy limbs. But the moment he boldly uses all the abilities which lie dormant within him, awaiting his call to help in his ascent, he is employing the talent entrusted to him in accordance with his Creator's will, and will easily overcome all obstacles that seek to divert him. Therefore, awake. Genuine faith lies only in conviction, and conviction comes solely through an inflexible weighing and examining. See that you are truly alive in the wonderful creation of your God, Abdushin. So, dear listeners, that is the title for your guidance from the Grail Message. And if you wish to get a copy of the Grail Message or want to have more information on the Grail Message, then you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that www.grail, Grail, message, MESSAGE.com. And we'll be back next Tuesday, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. UK time, with another topic. So hopefully you can join us again then. Now, Gregory, if you'd like to say to the listeners to say goodbye.
Wishing listeners a beautiful week.
Thank you. And the same from me, listeners. Hope to hear from you next week. God bless.